Earlier this week, Judge Jeanine had an exclusive interview with Lord Malcolm Pearson, a member of the British House of Lords. They discussed the threat ISIS and Islamic extremism it has in Europe and in the United States. Take a look.
You have come under fire for saying that this is clearly Islamic terrorism. Why is there a reservation or hesitation to do that?
Well, I think it's because of our old friend political correctitude. Our political leaders go on intoning that Islam is a religion of peace, when of course it actually isn't. And what they mean is that millions of Muslims live peaceful lives, but that's not the same thing at all. And so they're completely terrified of looking at the reality of what's going on in our schools and elsewhere, because they're frightened of being accused of Islamophobia, which is an unreasonable fear of Islam, when in actual fact, of course, the fear is perfectly reasonable.
Well, given what some are saying is clearly attacks in the name of God. In fact, Lord, what does Islam mean? They say that it's a religion of peace, but what does it actually mean?
Well, Islam means submission, submission to the will of Allah, as revealed in the Quran and in the life and actions of Muhammad, what he did and said, all as interpreted by their clerics. And there's no argument about that, and you're not allowed to talk about it. One of the things that really worries me about this whole thing is as soon as you start trying to talk about Islam and say, well, what about all these violent verses where Muhammad was killing people all over the place, or being commanded to kill them all over the place by Allah, you're told that it's your fault, that you were stirring up the hatred, and you can't possibly talk about it. Whereas, of course, the hatred is actually coming only in one direction, from them against us.
And Islam is to you, and to, I think, many, more than just a religion. Why do you say that?
Well, Islam, you see, is a religious, legal, and political system, and some would say an ideology, all rolled into one. There is no separation of powers, as you have in the United States, the judiciary, the executive, and so on. It's all one thing. It's all what's in the Quran, what Muhammad did and said, as interpreted by the clerics, and that's the end of it. And all Muslims are enjoined to follow the Quran and the example of the Prophet throughout his life.
When people talk about Islamophobia, you know, a phobia is something that is not rational. Given beheadings in the name of Allah and the burning of the coalition pilot, it certainly is rational, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I think it's quite wrong to talk about Islamophobia, because the fear is entirely reasonable. I fear Islam, and I think I have very good reason to do so, and so do you. I mean, starting with 9/11 and going on from there and seeing what's happening in North Africa. Of course we should fear Islam, but we should be allowed to talk about it. And we're not allowed to talk about it, because if we do, we are causing religious hatred and offending their sensitivities. We mustn't demonize all the peaceful Muslims who live in this country. We have to get together with them, talk about Islam, talk about the Quran, and get them to take on their violent co-religionists. After all, they're the vast majority. And why can't they deal with the tiny minority, which I think they want to, but we've got to help them to do that. And in saying everything we say about the more violent Muslims, we mustn't demonize the peaceful ones.
But if you're calling on the peaceful ones to, you know, engage in a conversation with the more violent element, the jihadists, aren't they afraid to do so given what's happening to Muslims even in the Middle East? The Muslims are being killed as well.
Yeah, no, I think that is true. I think they are afraid. And I think that is one very good reason why they don't do it.
Lord Pearson, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to having you on in the future.
Not at all.
And with me now for a reaction is Zaidam Khan. She is an activist for the global women's rights movement and a women's delegate for the United Nations. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much.
So you were recently in London. Tell us about your experience. Is Lord Malcolm Pearson correct in his assessment?
I absolutely agree with him. I think that he covers several key points, and one of them is being that there's a deep ostracization of reformist Muslims, progressive Muslims speaking out because there is a deep fear. There's a lot of backlash that's associated with it. The minute you tie the theological component to the radical ideologies that do exist there, you are immediately labeled as an Islamophobe. And this cuts the dialogue from any sort of progressive movement that can be done. And we've seen this happen even when we're seeing continuous human rights violations with women, girls, children, time and time again. And the term Islamophobia is always thrown the minute you begin to question, the minute you begin to ask why, what is the justification, and a lot of times the justification is theological, and it has been there. This isn't anything new. These laws have been codified for centuries.
Right.
And now ISIS is acting up on them, and we're reacting when really it's been there for quite a while.
And it's certainly made its way into the West. I was also in London recently, and just a couple of days before the Copenhagen shootings happened, I attended a anti-free speech Islamic protest in London, just outside our Parliament. I thought it was so interesting how they corralled off the women from the men at this protest, and they put the stage in the middle of the protest, and the all-male speakers turned their back to the women and only spoke to the men, which brings me to my next question for you. You have some interesting information on an ISIS manifesto for women and girls. What can you tell us about what their plans are for them?
Oh yeah, and this ISIS manifesto was actually written by their Al-Khamsa Brigade, which is all females, and they enforce these Sharia laws, but extreme versions of them where it justifies girls to be married at the age of 9. It gives an entire doctrine of what a woman's role is, how she can support ISIS and the jihad against any non-believers. And these are laws that are continuously imposed. And if you go against them, even to the point of your dress, how you can't leave the house without a male, companion, and yet at the same time, these are the same ideas and ideologies that are recruiting these women from the West to join ISIS as jihadist brides.
Right. Well, now you obviously have very strong connections to the UN. You have strong influence at the UN. What is the UN doing, not only to protect women and girls, but to stop the recruiting from ISIS that those women and girls can be protected from getting into a bad situation?
I think it's, unfortunately, a lot of times with the UN, there's continuous reports of human rights violations before some sort of action item is taken into place. And I've seen this quite a bit, and my hopes are that I'm able to have some sort of an influence in that we're able to act up upon the human rights violations that are continuously occurring, especially under the name of, religion or culture and what ISIS has been doing.
Absolutely, and I hope that we can move forward in the UN without being called Islamophobic for protecting the human rights of women and girls. Zainab Khan, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, the latest